Hello geometry students, and welcome to a video on reflections in the coordinate plane. Okay, we're going to be looking at reflections as one of 5 different transformations that we're going to look at all together. So before we talk about reflections, let's talk about what a transformation is in general. So a transformation is an operation that maps an original figure, which is called the pre-image, onto a new figure, which is called the image. When you look in the mirror, you're the pre-image, and what you see in the mirror is sometimes called the image, right? It's the same idea. A transformation can change many things about a pre-image as it changes it to the image. It can change the size. It can change the position. It can move from one place to another. And it can change the orientation. So the final image can be a different size. It could be in a different place. It could be turned in a different direction. It can also be distorted. So it doesn't have to be just these 3, but the main ones that we're going to look at will only focus on changing these 3. Transformations can change. They can like stretch things, like if you think of, for example, like a mirror at the amusement park, how you get distorted. That's another example of a transformation that changes more than just these 3 things. Okay, so a reflection is sort of like flipping a pre-image over some kind of a line and getting the image. So if you look closely at these 2 triangles, one of them has these little tick marks here. Those are pronounced prime. And so what we say is that the original point B reflects to going to B prime. So this is the pre-image B and then the image B prime. And the same thing with the A and the C. They have their primes too. And that's just a convenient way of knowing what goes with what. All right, so a reflection can be thought of as a flipping an image over a line that's called the line of reflection. We won't really talk about reflections without having some kind of a line of reflection, because you can't really just look at this and take the line out of it and talk about it with the same meaning. Okay, each point in its image with the reflection, each point in its image will be the same distance from the line. The same distance from the line of reflection. Okay, so if you look at this and you take, for example, B and B prime, and you were to measure from that line here to the line here, they would be the same. And that would be the same situation with every reflection. There's always going to be a line of reflection, and that distance rule is going to always hold true. Okay, now there's 4 lines that you should review and you should be good at and understand what they are before we talk about reflections. And one of them is the x-axis. Another one is the y-axis. Another is a vertical or horizontal line. Now when you get a vertical line, you get x equals some number. And a can be any number. And when you have just x equals a and there's no y in the equation at all, that's going to be a vertical line. And if you get y equals some number, b again can be any number, then you're going to get a horizontal line. Okay, so this is some stuff that will become more familiar as you do this, but you should have a background that this sounds familiar. All right, and then the 2 very important diagonal lines, one of them is y equals x, and the other one is y equals negative x. Now, by the way, just it's worth pointing out that these 2 equations, these are also horizontal and vertical lines, right? And another name for the x-axis, it's a horizontal line, so it's y equals, what do you think it equals? Y equals 0. That's the equation of the x-axis. And the y-axis, that's a vertical line. An equation of that would be x equals 0. You might see it in that form sometimes too. All right, let's go ahead and do our first reflection. All right, so here's how this is going to work. You're going to be given, in this case, 3 points that make up a triangle, and you're going to first plot those points. So this is also a little refresher on plotting points in the coordinate plane, which is something that I hope you guys are pretty good at. And just remember that this first number is the x direction, the second number is the y direction. If this is negative, it's going to go left. If it's positive, it goes to the right. And this goes up, or up it's positive, and down if it's negative. Okay, that's your whole review. At this point, I don't think you're going to need much more. We're going to start out by plotting those points. I'm going to have a highlighter handy, and I'm going to highlight whatever the line of reflection is. And this time I'm told it's the x-axis. So let's go ahead and plot those 3 points and highlight the x-axis. Okay, so there's my original vertices. That's this plural for vertex. That's the 3 corners of the triangle. Okay, so let's connect the triangle, and then we're going to reflect the triangle. So first let's connect it. Now notice I did label my A, B, and C. It's pretty important that you do that because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to find the image points. And remember, the original points before we do the reflection, what we're looking at right here, those are called the pre-image. And then once we reflect them over the line, we're going to get the image. Okay, so let's go ahead and reflect it. And this is a very visual process. We're really just going to look at the line, and we know it's got to be on the other side of the line, so it's going to just be straight across right there. That's going to be my C prime. And then we're going to do the same thing with A. So if this is 2 points above the lines, then A prime will be 2 points below the line of reflection. So there's my A prime. And then B, now I don't really need to count because I know that B was 7 units above the line. I counted already. So I'm going to count 7 units below the line now. So it's going to be straight along that same vertical line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units below right there. And so that is B prime. Now I'm going to connect my A prime, B prime, C prime, and I'm going to have the reflected image triangle. That's the image of triangle ABC. So you have to draw it, reflect it. It's not a bad idea if you want to shade it in. You can do that too. Colored pencils or highlighters are great for this whole unit. They're going to be helpful for this whole unit. So if you have even just a couple of colors, it's going to help you make this just a little bit more fun and easier to read. All right, so what were our coordinates of our points? Well, let's see what happened. A prime, A was negative 4, 2, and B prime was negative 4, negative 2. Negative 4, negative 2. C, or let's do B first. So B went from 4, 7, and it went to 4, negative 7. And C went from here 5, 1, and it went to 5, negative 1. So the x-coordinates didn't even change when we reflected over the x-axis, did they? Only the y-coordinates changed, and they didn't just change randomly, they became the exact opposite. Let's see what happens when we do a reflection over the y-axis. Okay? So why don't we try to do the same thing. This time this is a rectangle. So we're going to first plot the rectangle, highlight the y-axis, and I'm going to pause the video, ask you to pause it, and then we'll come back and finish the problem. Okay, so I have carefully plotted the 4 points. Notice that it does look like a rectangle, and this time I highlighted the y-axis. That's the line that we're going to reflect over. So this time we have to think sideways instead of up and down. When we reflect P, it's 1 unit to the right of the line of reflection, so the image will be 1 unit to the left. When we go to Q, that's 2 units to the right, so we're going to go 2 units to the left of the line of symmetry. I'm always staying on the same horizontal line here. Now R, again, I'm going to look up here, and I know that R was at 8, 3. So that means this reflection is going to stay at 3, but it's going to go to negative 8. And they make it easy. All of these grids are going to be 8 by 8 grids. So we know without having to count, this is going to be R prime. Let's see if this works out when we're done. And hopefully we're going to get something that looks like a rectangle. So S, we know, was at 7, 0. So we've got to go at negative 7, 0, which if you count, it's right there. And now let's name them. So this is my S prime. This is my Q prime. This is my P prime down here. and let's connect them. And you always want to make sure that you go through the whole process of connecting, because you really want to be able to look at it when you're done and say, yeah, that looks like you flipped the image right over that line of symmetry or that line of reflection. All right, now let's get all of our ordered pairs and let's kind of observe that we have a little pattern going on here. So what we have is we have P first went from 1, 2 to negative 1, 2. Q went from 2, 5 to negative 2, 5. R went from 8, 3 to negative 8, 3. And S went from 7, 0 to negative 7, 0. Now, there's two patterns here that I want to make sure are clear, and these are really important. And so these are two of the big four, okay? These are two of them. The other two we're going to do in a little bit. So this is reflection in the, we call this reflection in the x-axis, even though you want to say over the x-axis. Either way is okay, but a reflection in the x-axis will always take the points x, y, whatever they may be, and it will take those points, and like it did here, it keeps x's the same. All of the x's stayed the same, and all of the y's went to the exact opposite. So that's a rule for reflecting in the x-axis. Next, we reflected in the y-axis, and then whenever we reflect in the y-axis, we're going to get a rule too. A reflection in the y-axis took all of our x's and made 1, 2 to negative 1, negative 2. It changed the sign, took the opposite of each x. So our pre-image xy's went to an image that's the opposite of x, but look what happened to the y's. They stayed the same. They didn't change at all. So it went to the opposite of x, and y stayed the same. So we've got these two rules for reflection in the x, and I'm going to highlight these because these are pretty important. Reflection in the x-axis, or reflection over the line called the x-axis, and reflection in the y-axis. Okay? So when you do the ones below, I still want you to graph the pre-image, but you don't really have to count. You can use this rule. Okay? Let's go on to the second side. I'm going to leave these two for practice. Let's get to the other two. I said there's the big four. Okay, so one of them is number 9. So let's take a look at number 9. This is actually, I'm going to end this video, and I think I'm going to do the other two of the big four in a part 2. Okay, I hope you found this part 1 of the video on reflections helpful.